Hello, guys. I just wanted to talk a little bit today about the debate last night and kind of give you my thoughts. As I watched it, more like how I would have expected a debate involving Trump to go. Was it didn't really seem like on optics alone how I would imagine the average viewer would have watched it going into it. It seemed like at times Trump was just a little bit too into his own head and too esoteric with some of the statements issues. But one thing that I found interesting, being from Ohio, he mentioned that something about Springfield, Ohio, and some story involving Haitian migrants and them eating dogs or cats or something that I don't know if that's true or not, but it seemed like kind of a strange thing to bring up. So what were kind of the stakes going into this debate? There was the fact that the polls had shown the lead that Kamala was enjoying was starting to narrow somewhat, and that this debate was important for Kamala to get her face out there and prove herself in a debate. And I have to admit, I probably overestimated Trump's experience in debates. It doesn't with all his experience, he does get flustered and doesn't articulate his thoughts particularly well at times. And I think the more normie type of person is going to watch the debate and think that Trump again was that kind of figure. However, it wasn't like so. There were some odd facial expressions that Kamala was making throughout the debate. Some of her behavior was a little too scripted. Trump's behavior was more off the cuff. He acted like Trump, very bombastic and such. But a lot of Kamala's behavior was overly scripted, I thought. She spent a lot of time looking directly into the camera, and that's not usually that. The debate was between the two candidates, and that her looking directly at the camera was a little bit forced and overdone at times, I thought. But all in all, she performed better than I thought she would, and Trump performed a little worse than I thought he would. This is given my bias that I, even though I plan to vote for Jill Stein, I am doing that knowing that in the state of Ohio, Trump is overwhelmingly likely to win the state of Ohio. So I feel I have the liberty to vote third party, and I would say I encourage anybody from any state to vote the way that their conscience guides them, and to not make this about who wins or loses. You should vote the way you want to vote. I don't believe protest votes are something that you vote for who you want to vote for. But in my situation, I went into watching this debate rooting for Trump, and I want Trump to win. I also just don't believe that Trump has earned my vote, so that's why I don't plan to vote for him. But even with my bias in favor of Trump, I will say that he did not portray the urgency of his need to win this election in the proper way. He had some good moments. Trump did have some good moments involving. So he was able to. So So let me just say, in the order of the way that the debate questions were asked, inflation and the economy was one of the first issues. Um, Abortion came up pretty early because a lot of the people who watch the debates, they do tend to watch the debates early on and tune out later. Some people will catch the debate early, so moderators will front load the questions to favor the candidate that they probably are rooting for, which there's no surprise that ABC is rooting for Kamala, as was CNN, as will be any other network that chooses to that hosts a debate, because we don't know if there will be future debates or not. This might just be that one debate that Kamala Harris might just take this as that one debate that she did, just to check it off that box as a prerequisite for being a presidential candidate, and then it might just be left at that. And so abortion came up pretty early, and I think that the way that the moderators handled the abortion and also a variety of other issues, there was fact checking in this debate, which there wasn't in the last debate. So fact checking was a somewhat regular interruption. But then it was, I think, January 6th, and immigration came up. Foreign policy came up later in the debate. I would say like an hour into the debate. The debate was about an hour and a half. I think like it was an hour in before foreign policy even came up. I think the last question that one of the moderators asked was some comment Trump made about Kamala's race, which is a pretty biased question to ask. It doesn't have anything to do with anything. So Trump made some comment about whether or not Kamala identifies as black or Indian or whatever. But and he answered it adequately. He says he doesn't care what she is, and that's about the best answer that you should expect. Or there's really nothing he's supposed to say. I don't know, but I don't know what Trump is supposed to say about that. I don't even know why it was a question. So I will say the questions were overall a little bit biased towards Kamala Harris. I'm not gonna say that I can't remember every question that was asked. I know that there were a few questions that were not quite as favorable to Kamala Harris, but most of the questions like things about January 6th without providing full context, because the moderators are biased against Trump in terms of the way that they framed January 6th, which I thought was unfair. Of course, most people, I don't know how most people think about this, but the truth is, I think most people who follow politics to some extent or another would come to the conclusion that the media is overall largely biased against Trump, and always have been, and always will be. And every network that has ever hosted a presidential debate involving Trump has been a left-leaning network. It's always, how many of these debates have been on CNN or ABC? I don't know if there's been one on NBC anytime recently, but they've never done I'm pretty sure they've never done a Fox one. I could be mistaken. Maybe the one with Chris Wallace was on Fox, but maybe I'm mistaken in 2020. It wasn't Trump's worst performance. He's done worse. In fact, he may have done worse even in 2020 or 2016. He was a little bit more off message than he needed to be more on message. So honestly, I don't know how this is gonna be taken. I know how the mainstream media is gonna run with it. The mainstream media is gonna say that Kamala won, and she passed with flying colors, and it all went in her favor, and that there's no reason not to vote for Kamala. They were already saying that more or less, but I think that if you really look at what each candidate needed out of this debate, it's unclear if they got it. Kamala did succeed at just showing up for the debate against Trump and not having a meltdown in the way that Biden did, and that was a pretty low bar. So she was able to communicate effectively to some degree. So I think in that way she was effective. But she did, she dodged her fair share of questions. I think right off the bat at the start, she was asked about inflation, and she went into some tangent about herself and her upbringing, which couldn't have less to do with inflation and the economy under her administration. And also, but on the same sense, for Kamala, one of her goals was just to be able to connect with the American people, because a sizable portion of voters have no idea who she is, what she stands for. She's only been really in the public space in a serious way for the last 2 months. So, not even 2 months, like 6 weeks. So she really is new to the public stage, to the national stage in this way. She did one debate against Mike Pence in 2020, but this was her first presidential debate, and she really has been avoiding any policies. So she's really been avoiding policies. Nobody really knows people don't really know what she stands for. So she succeeded at just showing up for the debate and crossing that off her list. She failed in the sense that she actually got her policies across in a coherent way, and actually got to better acquaint herself with the American public. I think she failed on the sense that I really don't know much more about her having watched the debate or about her policies. Trump, I think, he lost the temperament battle, I guess you could say, because if it's important to swing voters and independents, that Trump be on point and very focused and present leadership qualities that I suppose would, if you want someone who's very controlled and polished and professional and calm, he was not that. He was more off the cuff and more bombastic and obnoxious than Kamala, although it's not even close to the most obnoxious Trump has been on a debate stage. It was still relatively restrained for Trump. But I think that he failed to some extent to tie Kamala into the Biden administration. He did make a few good points about this being Kamala Harris. Trump made a few good points about Kamala Harris and this being her administration, and he said something about I think he said something like if Kamala wants to make her policies that she claims to have, she could take a drive down to Washington right now, wake up the president, and put these policies into action. So it's true that Kamala has the power to go out there and make these changes now, because she is in the White House. She is the second most powerful person in the country. She is in the executive administration at this very time. So these promises she makes, what few promises she makes on policy, she could be doing those things now if she wanted to. She doesn't need to wait another 5 months, 6 months almost before implementing these if she were to win in in this election. So Trump made a few good points, but there were a few things that just didn't come up. Like Trump never asked her anything about how. I mean, because it is very clear that Kamala has been covering up for Joe Biden's health and his mental condition, and the pathetic display that we saw on the debate stage 2 months ago. Not even 2 months ago. Well, yes, it was 2 months ago. But Joe Biden's cognitive decline that we all saw on the debate stage, it begs the question how badly Kamala Harris, the vice president, was and presidential nominee, how bad she was lying to us. So it's very clear that we have undergone a substantial lie in the form of Kamala Harris and more than just Kamala Harris, but Barack Obama. I think Barack Obama and Bill Clinton have done fundraising events with with Joe Biden recently. But in June, shortly before the debate, Barack Obama and George Clooney, and I think it was Jimmy Kimmel, were doing some events with Joe Biden, and I just find it impossible to believe that Joe Biden wasn't that Joe Biden's mental condition wasn't apparent to those people, especially Barack Obama, and certainly Kamala Harris has been well aware of Joe Biden's health concerns and his condition, and it shouldn't. But it doesn't get talked about, and Trump failed to make it a centerpiece of the conversation. Trump failed to make this election about the fact that Kamala Harris is only on this debate stage and only as the nominee because Joe Biden melted down during the last debate and he couldn't finish sentences, and that Kamala Harris is clearly complicit in Joe Biden's mental condition and hiding it, and that this was not the way that this election was supposed to go. But the way this election was supposed to go was Joe Biden was supposed to sneak his way through the debates. Joe Biden, if you look at the way that Joe performed in the State of the Union back in March, he was on whatever drug cocktail that they put him on. He was able to get through the State of the Union effectively, and you wouldn't be crazy to think, oh well, he'll get through the debate, he'll rise to the occasion, because Joe's always done it before. But no, not this time. So not in the debate of June. So but it is clear that Kamala knew about it, and I think that it was a failure of Trump to not make this more about Joe Biden and his health, and the fact that the reason that Kamala is on the stage is because they were caught, because Joe Biden was caught and Kamala was caught, and Trump failing to. My advice had been, considering all this over a month ago, my advice had been for Trump to make this whole election about making sure to pin Kamala Harris to Biden at any chance they can. And Trump did that somewhat effectively, but not nearly as much as he should have. He should have hammered it home again and again during this debate, and he should have made it clear to the public, to the American public, this is completely unacceptable that Kamala Harris hid Joe Biden's health, because she clearly hid Joe Biden's health from the American public, and he failed to do that, and I think he overall he did a pretty good job of making it clear that Kamala Harris has the power to make these changes now if she wants to, and she's not doing it. She wants to wait, and but I think Trump failed to pin Kamala to Joe Biden as much as he needed to, and he failed to make this whole election. He failed to things that this debate was supposed to be is they're both trying to present themselves as the change candidate, um, and Kamala Harris is in the White House, so I wouldn't say that Kamala succeeded at portraying herself as the change candidate, and it's almost an impossible task, you would imagine, to portray yourself in that way. So where do I go from here? I guess lastly I'll say, does the debate really matter that much? And I will say on optics, it sort of does. On optics, uh, leaving temperament aside and personalities aside, this was Kamala's job was to check this box and do the prerequisite requirement of showing up for a presidential debate. She did one. She did it relatively effectively, and now she can say that she passed her test, and the media is going to say that she passed her test, and all the meanwhile, we're going to ignore the fact that she is part of a very unpopular administration in the form of Joe Biden, and that she covered up Joe Biden's health condition, and was part of all that. So nobody's talking about Joe Biden's health and the fact that we're in this mess because Kamala wanted power to the extent, like, there was a whole treasure trove of content that Trump failed to capitalize on, involving Kamala's pursuit of power to the extent that she was willing to play the politics game, and she was willing to cover up and hide Joe Biden's health if it meant her getting back in the White House, or keeping the White House. So her subservience to Biden and her, what I would call a dereliction of duty, because she has a responsibility to the American public to at some point she needed to come out and say to somebody, that it could be anonymously, but at some point she had a duty to make it clear, no, Joe Biden's not with it. Joe Biden is not sharp. He's not. He can't. The fact that it got to the debate stage in June, and shocked the American public by his performance, that was that was unacceptable, and Kamala had to have known about his health, and I think that Trump failed to make it about this conspiracy in the Democratic Party between Kamala Harris and Obama, frankly, as well. But Kamala's the one who's running, so she's in the hot seat more, and she's the sitting vice president and running for president right now. So I think Trump failed to do that. Trump did have some good moments, and ultimately it's hard to say if any of this will matter. The polls are still very close, although we don't know how this is going to shape out in the polls, so we're just going to have to see. But I think Trump could have done a better job, and I think the media is going to seize on the opportunity to portray this as a victory for Kamala. So we have yet to see how this is all going to shake out. All right, we'll leave it at that for now.